Hey, I know nobody's here yet right now, but going to go ahead and get started. Got my next generation Romulan tumbler mug cup thing. I've got some vodka screwdrivers. For those of you who know me, this is number 3. If you don't know me very well, you'll know that number 3 for me is about the equivalent of a normal person's number 8. Because I can drink pretty well. Like to have those pretty strong. I'm going to wait just a few more minutes till right at 11 o'clock to start. 11 o'clock my time, Central Time, to start the movie. I've got it opened up on the other tab. And so I'll be able to start it up in just a few minutes. And I will start watching. And hopefully some people will join me, and that'll be cool. If not, then you'll just be watching this in the after world of YouTube, wondering why for the first 6-7 minutes it's just this fat guy drinking and talking to the camera. This is really one of the first times I've really done one of these, so I guess if you've watched my videos, you'll know Giant Riker, the 8-inch talking Riker.
Red alert! Energize! Red alert! Energize! Shields up!
There it is, shields up. Yeah, I've got this shelf over here that I've got the Enterprise bridge display on. The paintings behind me are all paintings I've done. I've done all 14 of the current Doctors of Doctor Who. Directly behind me, that's the painting of Carrie Fisher that I did a couple of years ago. Yeah, that's most of the art in my room. There is one piece that's it's way over there. I'm not even going to bother right now. But it's a piece that a friend of mine gave me for my birthday, probably 7-8 years ago now. It's been a minute. But it's really cool. It's a painting of the statue of David, the famous one that was done by is that Raphael or Michelangelo? No, it was Michelangelo who did the statue of David. That's who it was. I knew it was one of the Ninja Turtles. With a sort of a contemporary pop art style. I need to remember to take a picture of it and post it on my Instagram sometime. It's pretty cool, and I've always enjoyed having that. It's a nice gift that he gave me some years ago. But yeah, so I'm going to be watching Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which came out in 1979. Now, what's kind of funny to me about the movie, when it originally came out in 79, it was rated G for general audiences. But around the late 90s, when they were putting it on VHS, it got upgraded to a PG, which I've always found a little bit odd, but it's, that's what they do. Not entirely sure why that happened, but yeah. So like I said, I'm going to be starting that up here in just a couple more minutes. If you want to hop on Paramount Plus, or you've got the Blu-ray or DVD and want to pop it in and join me, feel free. I will let you know the moment that I start it. so that if you want to watch along and get a kick out of any commentary that I have to make as we're going through the movie, then cool. Oh, got somebody who actually has joined us in the live chat. Hi, Brando Devon. Nice to see you. And he's gone. Okay. Well, yeah, 2 more minutes. I'm going to get this started. I will take, while I'm actually live streaming from my laptop, I have to take a minute to brag about, I love my laptop bag that I got. This is the Star Trek Next Generation laptop bag. This is so cool. It looks like it's got the large LCARS panel on there with the Enterprise. It is one of my favorites. And you actually got quite a bit of nice storage in it. It's actually, do I even have anything in this back pocket? No, I don't have. I've never even used this back pocket on it. But yeah, plenty of room for my mouse pad, my headphones, and I've got one of these ring light things so that when I do video calls and that kind of thing, I can have a little extra light. I'm going to be taking in on March 7th, I believe it is. I'm going to be doing a video chat with my buddy Vance, who has the Filk Ferret No Budget Productions channel here on YouTube. Does some pretty cool low budget Star Trek fan films. They're pretty good. Some of them better than others. I'm not trying to be judgmental, I promise, but he's got some really cool stuff. But it's fan films. Fan films are hit or miss, and sometimes even people who I like will get a hit, and sometimes they'll miss, and that's fine. So we're going to start up the movie. I've just hit play. It's loading, and here we go. Okay, got the Paramount Mountain, which, by the way, I gotta say, man, the commercials, they started like, what was that, about a year ago? Yeah, I would think it was actually exactly a year ago because of the Super Bowl last year, which the Super Bowl was just a few days ago from where we are now, that they premiered the commercials for Paramount Mountain, because I think they were also getting ready to start the whole Paramount Plus. They were changing from CBS, or God, I can't remember what the app was called then, but they were changing it to Paramount Plus, and they started the Paramount, and they did those commercials for Paramount Mountain, and they showed like, the various Star Trek characters, and even Stephen Colbert and all kinds of random people climbing up this mountain for no freaking reason. And they were just like, it's Paramount Mountain. And I just realized this is a good thing that I'm so pissed off about this, that I can talk through these credits, because these credits are so freaking long. I love this movie. I gotta say. So this movie is one of the ones that gets shit on a lot by people, but I actually like it. Like, first of all, it's Robert Wise, who was an amazing director. He'd been around for, by that time, something like 30, 35 years. He'd done a whole lot of movies. Very good director, and was really, the movie is very cinematic, which is something that a lot of movies kind of miss now. Like, I mean, this opening shot of the Klingon ships is freaking beautiful. I mean, one of the things I actually never checked on, I know that these were models that were built, but it shows the 3 Klingon ships. I I've never actually looked into whether or not they've just built one model and, duplicated it for the other two, or if they actually had 3 ships. I have to suspect that to save money, they probably just built one and duplicated it. But the shot as the camera pulls into the Klingon ship, super detailed. The bridge, it's actually kind of gorgeous. And that's, of course, Mark Leonard, who most notably everybody remembers him as playing Ambassador Sarek, Spock's dad, in Star Trek. He plays this Klingon. He had also played a Romulan commander in one of the episodes of the original series. But here he's playing this Klingon commander. The first time we get to see the Klingons with the forehead ridges. But the voice is actually Jimmy Doohan, the actor who plays Scotty. He kind of came up with these sort of sounds for what the Klingon language would sound like, and voiced over Mark Leonard, who was basically kind of ad-libbing, saying, fire, and he was like harsh, or whatever, of the Klingon commander. And this is on Paramount Plus, so it's probably it's definitely the director's cut from the early 2000s that has the digital upgrading. So it's a little cleaner than the way it originally looked, but most of the shots, the exteriors, have not been changed too dramatically much. This scene here with Epsilon 9 station, another one packed with fun tidbits of info of things in it. It's this, communications relay. There's only supposed to be a crew of like a couple of dozen. We got our first chance to see a space suit in Star Trek in general. This was actually, they never had shown in the original series any external spacesuit of any kind, and they had some environmental suits that they showed, but never an actual like suit with the helmet and the jets that you could move around and all that kind of thing. And so it was actually kind of cool that they had that. But yeah, so here on Epsilon 9, the commanding officer here was supposed to, when they were casting the Phase 2 a few years earlier, the guy playing the commander, was supposed to be playing the replacement for Spock. Commander Zahn was going to be the new science officer. And when they decided to cancel the show and make a movie instead, he decided he didn't want to stick with it, and so they offered to have him play this smaller part in the movie of the communications station commander. Which, and here's the thing: is we're 6.5 minutes into the movie almost, and we still haven't seen any of the crew that we're used to. It's all been the Klingons and the Starfleet space station, which is a lot of really great setup in this. And again, these models of the Klingon ships are beautiful. I always hated the fact that we never saw these particular versions of the ships until way later in Star Trek 6. Because, the bird of prey got introduced, but they sorry, I'm watching the movie. But yeah, it's a really cool ship, and I think we saw a couple of them during Deep Space Nine, but it was like, for the most part, after Star Trek 3, the Bird of Prey became the main Klingon ship, other than the Vorcha class and the Next Generation and so forth. But so yeah, here we are. We're on Vulcan with Spock. Which one of the things I gotta say that I always kind of wish they had been more clear in the movie is that this is supposed to be like approximately 2 to 3 years after the last episode of the original series that we saw. That was supposed to be that the crew finished its 5-year mission, and then about 2 to 3 years had passed before these events happened. And they're never real clear about it. They have the one line in the movie where Decker says that he spent the last 18 months overseeing the refit, but it's still it's not clear to the audience that Spock hasn't seen Kirk in quite a long time. I mean, of course, nowadays the way that COVID is, going 2 years without seeing your best friend is almost normal. But so yeah, you got this scene, and one of the things that people have complained about for this scene on Vulcan that I don't quite understand is the backgrounds. You can see this these moons and this other planet with rings. I love that. It's really quite gorgeous. The artwork that went into it was really amazing, and these costumes are quite good as well. Like, you can tell that this outfit that Spock's been wearing, it's dirty. He's been, obviously he's been out there for a while doing his meditations and crap, while the priestess and the other priest-looking dudes their clothes are nice and clean and look good. And I mean, it's because Spock's wearing almost the same thing as these other two dudes, just a little different, little changes, but it's filthy. Like, he's been out, almost like Jesus. He's been out in the wilderness praying and meditating for 40 days and 40 nights or something. And honestly, the way that the priestess talks here, you kind of get that idea that maybe that's kind of what was up. Because in a way, Spock, this is one of the things about this movie that is a little confusing to me. And I read the novelization years and years ago when I was like 16. And I may have forgotten, but I don't even remember the novelization clarifying much. Because they set all this stuff up about Spock having some kind of telepathic connection with V'ger or something going on. And then in the final act of the movie, that doesn't really get paid off, and I've never really understood what's going on there. But, maybe. So anyways, we've just gotten to Starfleet. We're looking at Admiral Kirk. He's meeting Commander Sonak. They're about to step onto a forklift to be lifted up this staircase. It's supposed to be like an escalator, but it was actually a forklift that was just used to elevate them. Again, as far as world building, this scene alone, I mean, there's a ton of aliens and people walking around. There's these shuttles that are used for this transport. It's really quite awesome. And then we get to the orbital, office complex, which is a really cool idea in general. If I had an office job, I would get the hell of a kick out of working in an office with that kind of view. And especially this big circle at the top that seems to be like some kind of a pavilion area. That would be an amazing place to have your lunch. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, again, there's these nice slow shots. You get to see the details in these models. It's the only thing real here that like real life scale in that shot. It was the what was inside the windows. The rest of it was like this big, and so it's really quite beautiful. And I like the fact that the movie slowly all of the characters. We got the Kirk being reintroduced, and then here's Scotty being introduced, talking to Kirk, who's going to then take him over again in the shuttle. And here's the thing: everybody, this is what this scene coming up is the scene that everybody complains the most about in this movie, because they spend, they spend 28 minutes. It's only like 5. I think it's less than that. We'll actually find out here in just a minute. Let's see. So we're at 13 minutes and 14 seconds into the movie as the shuttle pod is leaving the office complex to go up to the new Enterprise. That people complain that takes so long, but for one, you got to remember it had been 69 to 70. It would have been 10 years since fans had seen the Starship Enterprise, despite the fact that in the movie universe only 2 to 3 years had passed. Which the funny thing about that is that then after that, the next movie they made 2 years later, but there was like a 10-year gap between whatever. So yeah, they had done these changes to the Enterprise. Like, it's essentially the same. Like, you can tell the bones of the ship are still the same, and so is the bones. But because they had made some of these visual changes, the engines are actually dramatically different. The saucer, it's only a little different. There's some minor aesthetic changes, but overall, they wanted to take time to slowly go, hey, that sexy girl you knew in high school? Well, now she's a sexy mom, and you should take a minute to really, really see what she's got now. And that's kind of what they're doing here. Is they're showing the Enterprise, glam up, or glow up. There's the phrase, glow up. This is the Enterprise's glow up scene. They're sneakily, hiding behind the framework of the space dock. We're seeing the new engines. The side of the saucer looks pretty close to the same, and then we see the engineering section, and the dish is no longer there. It's part of the build. And all the visual effects that went into this, with the little tiny things of the other shuttle pods and the little spacemen walking around, and this beautiful shot of the Earth with just the handful of stars in the background as Scotty pulls the shuttle to come back around. It's, I'm always reminded of, I believe it was Interview with a Vampire. One of my favorite scenes in that movie is when Lestat is, he's talking about going through the ages. Was it Interview? It was one of those movies. Man, I'm drawing a blank right now. But he talks about the introduction of cinema, and there's the scene that they show him in the movie theater watching the 70s version of Superman with Christopher Reeves, and he makes the comment during the movie, it was the first time in decades that I'd seen the sunrise. And that's the thing that I feel like a lot of people miss out on with these beauty shots like this is yes, they're long. They don't feel like they're adding to the story, but they add to that round, clean, cinematic feel. And they really give us a chance to just relax. Because, I mean, especially in this story, the suspense and the tension does a slow build throughout the story. And it's really underappreciated. So, oh god, it's just these shots. I mean, to be fair, this is one of those where it's always funny to me when I hear people talking about Shatner being a horrible actor, and I'm just like, we're not watching the same guy. Like, some of the comedies that he's done, he intentionally goes over the top, and yeah, fine. He's being silly, over the top actor in those, but watch him in this movie, or hell, even more so, Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 3. The scenes when Spock dies, the scene when his son dies, those, and okay, I wanted to see how long. So we said it was 13, 12, and now we're at literally 19 minutes. Okay, so it's almost 7 minutes. Well, only about 6 of that was actually of the beauty shots of the Enterprise, because there was about 30 to 45 seconds of the pull up. Man, this shot of the inside of the Enterprise's cargo and shuttle bay, beautiful. But no, William Shatner is actually a fantastic actor. Like I said, I know he can be over the top, but he is so good. Like this moment in the turbo lift, when he stops and he pauses, he breathes. It's really subtle, but it's kind of nice. That, because I mean, first of all, we know, well, we will know for sure in a few minutes, he has not been on this ship in nearly 2 years. And I feel like I'd kind of have a similar reaction to a place where, if I hadn't been there, it's, if it was a favorite place of mine and I hadn't been there, or a good example would be, someplace you used to live, the house you grew up in. You'd probably have that moment when you came in where you were just like, oh man, I haven't been here in ages. And it's that sort of deep, amazing feeling. Sorry, a friend just texted me asking about Deep Space Nine. That's my wife. And I love this shot. It's so small. The little hovering cargo carrying thing. This is really cool because you can actually see how this set got rebuilt later on for the Next Generation. Like, the railing is identical to the Next Generation. They didn't even bother trying to change the railing, which is actually fine. But it's cool knowing, this is the same room that Geordi would be in years later. And again, I was talking about the character introduction earlier. We saw Sulu and Uhura and Chekhov on the bridge, and now we're finally getting to meet Decker, who, there was this bigger plan originally. Sorry, I'm just about out. There was this original plan for him with the Phase 2 series, that he would have been a bigger character. And of course, the thing that a lot of people forget about is that he's supposed to be the son of Commodore Decker from the original series episode, The Doomsday Machine. And so there was supposed to be this whole sort of thing where Kirk felt guilty about the way that, you know, this kid's dad had died, and so that's why Kirk recommended for him for this position. Excuse me. And it was supposed to be this sort of tension about, you know, that he felt like he was in a position that was undeserved because Kirk felt sorry for him, and now he felt like he had to really assert himself towards Kirk because of the position he was in now as the captain of the Enterprise refit. But this, and so yeah. Then there's this. This is where we're down here where the transporter scene. This is really the only chance that we get to see the former yeoman Rand. She now seems to be, I think, Lieutenant Rand, the chief transporter officer. Oh, hi, Trek reviewer. Thanks for joining me. I am watching the Star Trek The Motion Picture. We're 24 minutes and 9 seconds in. If you want to try and catch up, that's cool. I've just been enjoying watching this. This is where, you know, one of the things about this scene that I've always wondered is who the heck is the other person? Like, obviously, it was supposed to be Commander Salak, whatever the hell the briefly introduced Vulcan from earlier, and some, you know, random lady who apparently died in this scene. I always was a little curious, you know, who was that supposed to be? You know, was that the new chef who was supposed to come on board, and that's why everybody was grumpy through the rest of the movie because the food sucked? In that line, it didn't live very long, fortunately. Sonak, that's his name, Commander Sonak. Sorry, I forgot who it was. He's one of those unimportant momentary characters. You know, and I gotta be honest, that moment right there, when Kirk says to Rand, "It wasn't your fault," and Rand shoots him this look that is it's a hard look, man. Like, I appreciate in the moment, you know, and obviously this comes down to the writing, that Kirk, you know, was trying to, you know, be nice to this officer he'd worked with for years, you know, comfort, you know, giving this moment of comfort. But man, you can tell that Rand was like, dude, this fucking sucks. I just lost 2 people. And Trick Reviewer says, according to the book, it was you know, I do remember that. I mentioned earlier that I read the book like probably about 20 some odd years ago, and I barely remember it now. And I do remember it being another like this, the person that Kirk was dating. Man, there was a lot of weird shit in that book. I remember that too, because there was this whole thing about oh god, I can't even remember. But anyways, this scene on the recreation deck with Kirk talking to the crew, I love this moment because we get to see a ton of extras. I love the fact that Dr. Chapel is up there right alongside the rest of the crew, the senior staff, because that's appropriate now that she is the senior medical officer. I wish she'd gotten a little bit bigger role in the movie in general, but of course they bring in here in a few minutes. Dr. McCoy will be showing up, and taking over all the medical stuff for the movie. But so, and here's that character we were talking about earlier, the commander of the communications array. By the way, I love that. That is one of those. The size of it is 82 AUs, and you hear that, and and obviously, when I was a kid, the first time I ever saw this movie, I was just like, "Oh, that sounds big." But then you go, as you start getting older and you learn stuff and read books from NASA and find out the actual size, that 82 AUs isn't just big. 82 AUs is like, if I remember correctly, it's like if you take the solar system, like our solar system, where you have the sun, Mars, Earth, Saturn, Venus, etc., and then multiply that by like 10, that's supposed to be like 82 AUs, astronomical units. So it's like, okay, maybe that was a little too big. Like, honestly, in the movie, they do a fair job of making it look big, but their statement within the movie probably a little overdoing it. But no, this scene is really cool. We get to see, they show again V'ger attacking, but all of the extras in this scene is what's so cool. You see some Andorians, some Tellarites, some Rigelians, several different aliens, and I love the diversity there. Again, talking about acting, just take some time in that scene to watch Jimmy Doohan's face. Scotty, you can tell Scotty is really concerned. I mean, it's and again, horror. It's amazing. You can really see that the actors were like, no, we're supposed to be scared shitless of this thing that's coming for us, and you can see it in the characters. So yeah, here we're finally supposed to be getting ready. We're about to get the introduction of Ilea, the last of the new characters for this movie. We'll get, which again was supposed to be a character who was going to be a regular for the Star Trek Phase 2 series. A Deltan who, and I love the fact that recently there's been a lot of talk online about the amount of sexualization that Gene Roddenberry specifically tried to include in Star Trek. And that line she just said, "My oath of celibacy is on record," which is hilarious because of the idea that apparently Deltans are supposed to be releasing so many pheromones that it can cause like the men on the starship to get so horny that they lose control. But yeah, so here we see the return of Dr. McCoy. Again, this is the only other scene I think that we have Rand in. Why she's not, on break trying to, recover her mindset from the fact that she just fucking lost 2 people. Oh well, she's just right back at the job like nothing happened. I find that a little unrealistic. If I'd had 2 people just die on the job as part of my responsibility, and now she's now I'm expected to just be back at work. Okay, yeah, space. But yeah, bearded Dr. McCoy with his hippie aesthetic. I fucking love. I wish we'd gotten more of this doctor, the bearded McCoy. And again, like I was talking about earlier, supposed to have been like 2 to 3 years since he's seen Kirk, which I kind of find a little weird. You would think, as good of friends as they were, they'd have been in contact over the time of. And I love that moment with McCoy. They've probably redesigned the whole sick bay. I know these engineers. They just love to change things. That's a great moment from DeForest Kelly. I've actually wondered if some of the scenes, especially in this movie, with him, there's several moments that feel almost ad lib. That could just be how good DeForest Kelly was as an actor. That he really makes those lines feel really natural, or is it because I've never looked up the original script. I should at some point to see if that was part of the dialogue or not. But okay, I can't read that name, but Vum today. Okay, cool. Oh, thank you. Trick Reviewer just said that they liked the Lieutenant Commander Argyle figure I made. Thank you. Yeah, that was. Uh, I've been I've been working on a ton of customs lately. Um, I've got somebody who they wanted actually a couple of figures from this movie from Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I did. We've done. I've already finished the Yeoman Rand. Well, Lieutenant Rand, Transporter Chief Rand figure for them, and I am in the. No, I did already finish the Dr. Chapel figure. I'm working on a Dr. Chapel from Star Trek 3, where she's wearing sort of the medical fatigues, the all white outfit. I'm working on that one for them as well. But yeah, that Commander Argyle, this is one of those where the Sequest line saved us a lot of work on that, was by having that the security chief from the first season of Sequest looks so much like the actor who played Commander Argyle that you just have to take that hat off and give him a nice sculpt of his hair. So yeah, 35 minutes into the movie, we're finally really getting into the push forward now. On this, we've got all the characters finally brought in. Well, almost. Technically, Spock, he's been reintroduced to the audience, but he hasn't showed up on the Enterprise yet. That moment, the departure angle, I really feel like that was just the director showing off. I don't know why. It's a weird moment, honestly. Like Kirk's just like, I want to see the Earth moving away from us. Oh, look at that. Ooh, it gets smaller. Like that's a little I don't know. And then we get our first true captain's log. We haven't had one of those in, as far as audiences at this point, we hadn't had one of those in 10 years, other than the animated series, which I know a lot of people will debate the animated series left and right. I love the animated series. There are some fantastic episodes in the animated series. There's some that weren't as great, but honestly, to me, the animated series is a lot like the first season of The Next Generation. There are some really fantastic episodes in there, and there's some that it's just like, why am I bothering? Big difference being is that the animated series doesn't have an episode during its season that's just damn near full-on racist. So, anyways, we've got McCoy, who just showed up without a beard. I don't know why he had to shave, but he shaved. And he's got another uniform variant, which is, that's one of the things that's great about this movie, is all the uniform variant. Like, if you're a uniform person, and like now we're back in engineering and everybody's fucking wearing a whole new uniform. They're all in the like radiation suit, which they weren't wearing that 10 minutes ago when we first showed up in engineering. But no, now everybody is wearing this radiation suit thing with the little thing that you plug the dill into. And the helmets. But this movie, and everybody complains about the drab colored uniforms. I actually get a kick out of them. It's very 70s aesthetic. And the beige, the tan, the blue, that sort of gray blue color. It's great. And that moment when Kirk does the thing where the two halves of his armrest things come down and lock down over his legs. It's the closest we got until, I mean, what was that? Star Trek Nemesis came out in 2002, I believe, and was the first time that we actually saw seatbelts. But no, Kirk's little armrest lockdown thing is actually kind of like a seatbelt. Like, honestly, I feel like if something happened, that would kind of hold him down into the chair, the way that it locked down. And, we never got that again until I was doing that 22 years later with Star Trek Nemesis. Man, when I start doing math of things like that, I start feeling really old. Of course, after Kirk here has locked his little armrest down over his legs, and then in the background you see McCoy holding on to the handrail with that look of, oh fuck, I'm gonna die, aren't I? That is, I love it. And again, we were talking about, the acting. You can actually see Shatner doing that look of the pissed, you're contradicting me. Because I know that feeling of, when I have said something that I feel like is right, and somebody else, immediately goes, no, you're wrong. They aren't normally doing it with, streaks coming off of their head going, no, don't try. Weird special effects in this particular scene, but whatever. I've never really understood the science of this particular scene, but it's definitely one of those, you just accept it because it's fiction. But no, that moment when Decker contradicts Kirk, you really feel that he's pissed about that. And then he slowly starts going, okay, no, he's probably about right. Let me see. Trucker says he's going to contact me about making some figures for him, and a figure based on the actress that played Lita in Babylon 5. Man, I love Babylon 5, and the figures that they made for those. I think I've actually got the 6-inch version of Lita. Possibly. Was she the one who was part of the? Oh man, it's been too long since I've watched Babylon 5. It's like I feel like what was Bester? He was the head of like. It was almost like the Babylon 5 equivalent of Section 31. special security forces or something to that effect. And was she the one who was one of his like lieutenants or something? Man, I am really having a hard time remembering that right now. It's been probably about 10 years since I last did a rewatch of the whole Babylon 5 series. I really love the series. I still need to watch. There was, because like after the Babylon 5, they did a few like was it a movie or miniseries? Man, I can't remember. I think it was called like Warriors of Light or something like that. Anyways, getting back to the movie. So this moment where they go to Kirk's quarters because for some reason he doesn't have an office of any kind on this ship. That actually, if I stop and think about it, perhaps it was actually, if there is a captain's office of some form, it still would have been Decker's, and maybe Kirk was actually being polite and not using Decker's office. That actually would make sense. But so yeah, it was the quarters here. That was sorry. I knew it. Like I said, been a long time since I watched Babylon 5, and I was having a brain fart moment of trying to remember what that was called. I knew it was part of because Bester, the character that Chekhov, that Walter Koenig played, he was the like one of the heads of Psi Corps, if I recall. And feel free to correct me. I know it's been a long time since I've watched the show. I'm probably very confused. He says she didn't work for Vester. Okay, that's fine. I was, like I said, probably very confused on that. So anyways, trying to watch a movie, and I'm talking about Babylon 5. What's hilarious to me is, this is probably one of the only scenes between Decker and Ilea in the whole movie until really the end of the movie, where they combine to become the new V'ger entity thing, and we can really see how it was used later on as the template for Riker and Troy later on. But yeah, anyway, so again, Kirk's quarters. I've always gotten a kick out of the fact that these later on became Data's quarters on Next Generation, and all those corridors that we saw. Sorry, I'm sliding off of my seat. So, yeah, you can see the massive amount of reuse for the Next Generation series. Just gonna keep my giant Riker right there. Although I have always wondered about those glass doors that. Why didn't Data get to keep those? Those were cool. Again, the Vulcan shuttle thing. I love that. And, it was actually not until just a few months ago that I found out about the toy that they were supposed to make of the Vulcan shuttle. And that it was supposed to, I've never actually gotten to see one in person, but I've seen pictures of the the play set for the bridge from Star Trek the Motion Picture, and I've actually got a couple of the motion picture figures that were the 3.5. Well, they were actually closer to like 3-inch scale. They're just a little tiny bit smaller than the GI Joe, Star Wars figures. I believe they're called G scale. This is something I'm still learning as I've been getting into the community, as all of the nicknames for all the various scales. And apparently the Star Wars and GI Joe figures that are all about 3.5 inches, 3 3/4 inches are called G scale. But anyways, that they were planning on making the Vulcan shuttle in that same scale, and they never did. And it was supposed to be able to do that scene where you could see that we just watched, where it backs up and connects to the back of the bridge section, so that you can redo that scene where Chekhov meets Spock at the airlock. Another thing I've always been curious about, and it's been like about 25 years since I read the book, and it might have been in the book, I can't remember. Why is it that Spock gets to wear his little collared shirt under his uniform for the rest of the movie? Because that's the thing, he's seen wearing this, Vulcan outfit with a collared shirt, which I love the box collar on there, which was obviously a template for the Next Generation uniforms a few years later. But yeah, and in the scene, the outfit you see Dr. Chapel wearing is the one that I just made for somebody. I actually posted a picture of it on my Instagram a few days ago. But Trek Viewer says they might have used those doors for Dr. Crusher's office. Did she have doors? I remember that they had the plexiglass walls that had the catechus on them, but the door, I don't think the door closed. Maybe it did during the early seasons. You might be onto something. I'm not sure you're entirely right, but you're probably onto something. It's hard for me to remember. This moment. So, Kirk's wearing the short-sleeved white shirt here in this scene, and we see several of the other officers still in uniforms. And and I was talking about the fact that there are multiple uniforms in this movie, but for some reason, several people have argued with me in the past, saying that we see other officers wearing white shirts. And I'm like, no. I mean, I've actually literally seen several of these uniforms in person. I've seen that white shirt that Kirk is wearing in this scene. I have seen the tan colored shirt that Sulu wears through about 2/3 of the movie, something like that. And people will tell me that those tan shirts are supposed to be white. And I'm like, no, they're not. Kirk is literally the only officer wearing white in this whole goddamn movie. I don't know how other than, sorry, I do have to rephrase that. McCoy, we do see McCoy and Chapel wearing white in sickbay. Throughout most of it, McCoy is wearing the senior officer blue, and Dr. Chapel is wearing the mid officer tan. That's, from what I've always understood, is that senior officers get to wear the blue, the sort of grayish blue color, and the mid-range officers get to wear the sort of tan color, and then there's the yellow. And Trevor says, I do not like these uniforms at all. I actually kind of do. Like I said this a little bit earlier, I've got actually kind of got a soft spot for those 70s aesthetics. Which God, what was the name of that movie? I believe it was called Starbase or Space Station. I think it was called Space Station 76. I'm gonna let the movie keep going. I'm gonna look this up on my phone real quick just to make sure I remember correctly. It came out around, I want to say around 2014, 2015. That it's a space sci-fi movie. That they intentionally made it. Okay, it was 2014 when the movie came out. It's called Space Station 76. Really cool movie that intentionally has the 1970s aesthetic of the tans, the brown colors. They remind you of the uniforms from Space 1999. Yeah, which, I mean, you got to remember that was only a few years earlier. You know, that because what Space 99 that came out, I think that the show started around the same time that the original series was ending in 69, if I remember. So yeah, I mean, Space 1999, which I will admit I've not watched the whole show. I've watched most of the first season, and that's about it. It's one of those that I keep saying I'm going to get around to. I'm going to get around to it. There is a lot of the white and tans. I remember that because at one time I had somebody who was trying to get me to buy some action figures from Space 1999, and I was just like, it was one of those situations of the price was just higher than my interest. that's one of those things. Like with most sci-fi stuff, I have various levels of interest. Like obviously Star Trek's way up here. You know, Babylon 5's probably right about here, and so is Star Wars right about here. But other things like Lost in Space is a little lower. Like I really do enjoy Lost in Space. The new series on Netflix kicks ass. It's like Space 1999 is probably right about here, and their price point was like right about here. And I was just like, those are cool, but if you brought the price down a little more for me, I'd probably be more interested. But anyways, but yeah, I know everybody complains. I love this aesthetic, and the wrist communicators. That there are so many things that were in this movie that they just dropped. They have the little belt things. I know that I'm holding this way above my waist. That the little thing on their belt was supposed to be this whole device for monitoring their health and blah 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 blah. And they had the communicator on their wrist, which also was like supposed to be a watch, and all these other kinds of things. Like, that was brilliant. Like, we are using technology like that now. And oh god, this scene here. So again, we've got this moment where Spock's supposed to be having this telepathic communication with the V'ger device, and they build it up again, and they drop it in the final act, like it had nothing to do. Sorry. Let's see. The second season of Space 1999 was produced by the same guy that produced the third season of Star Trek Original Series. Oh, I know who you're talking about, and I'm drawing a blank right this minute. Which I'm going to be honest. Third season of Original Series is the only season of Original Series that I feel is the hit or miss season. Because there's There's some really great episodes in the third season. And there's some really questionable episodes in the third season. Was it Justman? I think it was Justman. I think you're talking about. I can't remember his first name right this minute. Was the producer. I may be mistaken. But yeah, it's, for one, the uniforms in this movie, like if you get over the colors for a minute, they look formal but comfortable. Like, that's one thing you can't really say about the monster maroon uniforms of Star Trek 2 through 6. Like, those uniforms, they look amazing, but they also don't look all that comfortable. They honestly, those uniforms look kind of, they look like I would need a constricted, what the heck is that thing called? Women during the Victorian ages wore them around their midsection, and I am full on forgetting what it's called. A corset. The Monster Maroons look like I would need a corset to be able to wear it and look proper, whereas the uniforms in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, they look like I said, they look good. They look somewhat formal, but they still look comfortable. Which I've heard, apparently the pants for the men, the pants weren't exactly comfortable in the crotch region. Again, I don't necessarily know about that. I've never actually tried to wear something like that. That exact uniform. Boy, I've never noticed that Kirk sits really fucking weird in that scene. Like, he was sitting with his legs, like, weird. It was an odd moment. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, back about 20 seconds and look at the way Kirk's sitting. Fred Freeberger produced the third season of TOS. Okay. I definitely take your word for it. That's when it comes to a lot of the producers, I have I don't pay a whole lot of attention, so cool. I don't remember that name right offhand, but definitely take your word for it. But yeah, I'm in the process of gotten the stuff to start working on custom figures for a lot of the stuff in this movie. Of course, I made a Kirk wearing this white short sleeve outfit. I made that about a year or so ago. I've got the stuff to make. I'm going to be doing Chekhov, Scotty, Ilea, and Decker as soon as I can. As soon as I finish making all these other figures for other people. And here we are. We're getting to the part, and let's see, how far are we into this movie? We're exactly an hour and 1 minute into the movie before they first start going into the V'ger creature cloud. And the special effects here, like, I realize some of this is the modern stuff that they added back in the early 2000s, but it's still really beautiful. But a lot of it's still the sort of that 2001: A Space Odyssey style, retro-ish, space effect. And like, I've honestly wondered if some of those shots got reused for Deep Space Nine for the wormhole effect, because there's few of them are very similar. On eBay, you found a Chekhov and Kirk and Voyager uniform. I hope you didn't overpay for those, because that's something. Head swaps for those are something that can be done super cheap. Like, honestly, the most expensive part of that is getting the Voyager bodies, because for some reason, it's funny to me. The Voyager figures came later. They didn't start introducing those until 95, whereas the Next Generation figures came out in 92, DS9 in 93, and the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine figures are still super cheap. Like, I mean, honestly, you can get a loose, like, Picard or Cisco or O'Brien for like $2, $3, $4. Being fair, if somebody's being an asshat, they'll be like, it's $8. And I won't pay that, just straight up. I will not pay $8 for a Wave 1 Picard. It's not worth it. But the Voyager figures, even though they made them in the same quantities, apparently they just didn't quite get purchased in the same quantities. And it's a little hard to get some of the Voyager figures, which kind of sucks for us customizers, because we want to be able to do stuff with the Voyager figures more often. And well, I mean, just to give you an example, like getting a hold of the Chakotay wearing the Maquis outfit, super cheap. Getting a hold of a Chakotay in his uniform, I'm probably going to have to look at spending like $10, $15, maybe a little more. Hopefully not. I don't really want to do more than that. You didn't buy them, good. Because, like I said, that's head swaps, super easy. You have 2 O'Briens in the DS9 uniform. Yeah, that's one of the really common ones. Those aren't hard to get a hold of now. I mean, honestly, if you go on eBay and just look for the O'Brien, the DS9 O'Brien especially, you should be able to get it for less than $5 easy. You could probably get it for less than $6 on card, sealed, brand new. Just to be completely fair. Whereas, like I said, the Voyager figures are a lot harder, and what the bad thing about Voyager is that the female figures, the Janeway and the Torres, are like, they're available, but they're even more expensive. So we're still going through V'ger. We're getting back to the movie. We're still traveling through V'ger. Spock and Decker have already started figuring out the whole thing about how V'ger communicates super fast. And so they have to accelerate the way that they talk to him in order to communicate it. Man, I love that visual. It's going back to what I was talking about earlier about how big V'ger was supposed to be. It's actually, like, it's one of those things of, on one way, I feel like they were being ridiculous saying it was 82 astronomical units. But they did a decent job in this movie of showing the scale of, little ship, big bad guy, building this tension of, they're slowly getting to see more and more of what this thing is that's been, that destroyed their communications array, that destroyed 3 Klingon ships, that's, basically been eating everything that comes in its way. And they make it look like this cool, long cavern. Like, if you've never had the opportunity to actually go down in a cave, then you're probably not going to quite know what I'm talking about here. But this shot here is actually really good at making it feel like a long cave. That was actually when I've always been really big into geology and caves and things like that. And so as a kid, I liked going to caverns a lot. And they did a really good job. I mean, and goes back to the whole thing earlier in the movie of showing the new Enterprise, essentially, of the way that it looked, is that they made that the Enterprise look nice and big early in the movie. And now here we are, we're an hour and a half into the movie, hour and 15 minutes or so into the movie. Sorry, I'm sliding off my chair again. And now this Enterprise looks so tiny by comparison. Mammoth thing that they are traveling through. And by the way, again, going back to cinematography, this shot of looking just over the edge of the helm console at Sulu, brilliant shot. Let's see. Trek Reviewer said, I hope the Playmates re-releases some of the clear figures from Voyager, such as 7 and 9, maybe even a 7 and 9 in the science uniform. They will probably do a 7 of 9. It's probably going to be the silver uniform, just to be completely honest, because that was what got used in like 90% of the advertising. And so when people think of 7 of 9 from the 90s, they think of the silver outfit. I mean, think of I'm going to eventually do an episode on my show about I've got the 12-inch 7 of 9, the Barbie scale 7 of 9, and it was only ever made in the silver outfit. But as far as making the science uniform version, again, that is actually a super easy head swap. Just getting a Dax figure and putting a 7 of 9 head on it. But I'm sure they will probably do 7 of 9 the way that she looks in Picard. You know, probably like a leather jacket kind of look. Which earlier, oh man, I don't know if anybody follows Jessie Gender. She apparently was able to get a hold of the audio drama that is not actually coming out for like another few days of the Star Trek Picard. Like, it's supposed to be the things that take place between season 1 and 2, and there's a whole lot of stuff with Seven and Rafi and all that, and it sounds really cool. And she posted a little teaser. Jessie Gender posted a little teaser on her page earlier today, and I was just like, oh man, that sounds really cool. Which is actually kind of cool that Star Trek's moving into doing the audio dramas. Like, really, the only big fandom that I follow that does the audio shows like that has been Doctor Who. And so the idea that Star Trek's doing it now is actually pretty cool. I've got some plans to do a possible Star Trek audio drama coming up. Well, audio comedy. Hopefully it'll be funny. Coming up eventually. So yeah, going back to the movie, again, the special effects of this scene are actually really freaking cool. I love that. Don't interfere with it. And Chekhov's just got that moment of, are you fucking kidding me? Of course I'm not going to fucking touch it. But no, the way that they did this special effect in the movie it was just a freaking those bar lights that they have on the ceiling. God, I'm blanking on the name for them. It was just one of those that they put vertically and moved it around the set to light up things in a particular way, and then added all these weird effects around it. And it's time for another drink. Let's see. And oh no, Spock pissed off the alien, and then he got too close to Ilea, and Ilea is going to stand between Spock and the alien thing. And for some reason, because just reasons, the alien's going to take the bald sex lady. This is one of those moments of where, again, I love this movie. Got a couple of inconsistencies that I'm just like, what? If they did that effect now, it would be CGI. Well, actually, to be fair, because honestly, the all the little like visual effects around the light now that were in that scene would definitely be done with CGI now, whereas at that time it was pretty much all hand drawn, which I can't remember what the name of the YouTube channel was, but there's a YouTube channel that recently did a thing where they took the new movie Dune, which was really good, I enjoyed, and they redid the visual effects to look like the old 1980s, which, almost same time as this movie with Patrick Stewart. I actually love the original version of Dune from 80. And Patrick Stewart's great in that, and he still has no hair. I love it when you actually can find a picture of Patrick Stewart with hair. But anyways, I'm digressing. They what they were doing was they were taking some scenes from the new movie Dune and trying to make the similar visual effect of the body shields in the new movie from the old movie in the new movie. The old movie had a very specific sort of cubist-y look for the personal body shield that they didn't have in the new movie. And they split up into two teams, and one team did it using CGI and the other team did it using, well, I should say the one team you did it using CGI that's like simple programmable style, and the other team did it using a CGI that's more like the hand drawn, like you specifically have to position, which is essentially what it would have been like, more towards the like early 90s than early 80s. But that was like big stressful work just to do that. And honestly, the version that the guy who did the hand drawn version on Dune did was honestly better looking than the fully CGI rendered version. And seeing that made me really wonder about some of the stuff in our modern movies. Like, that was one of the things that J.J. Abrams talked about when he was making his Star Wars films, was using more practical effects. And I will say that overall, I really do still prefer practical effects. Like, obviously, there are things in sci-fi, especially, you know, fantasy fiction, that are impossible to do practically. But you really have to go, you know, when you have the opportunity to do a mostly practical, like honestly, like going back to probably like one of my top 5 films would be the original Jurassic Park. They did as much of that movie with the dinosaurs in that movie with puppets of various sorts as they could, and then did CGI to fill in those little moments where the puppet couldn't quite get it right, and so they were able to use the CGI to augment the practical. And I really feel like if more movies were made that way, like honestly, think of, you know, if somebody really wanted to take a movie like, say, The Labyrinth, which had amazing, God, I mean, you want to talk about a ton of practical effects that are absolutely astonishing. The Labyrinth is one of the most visually amazing practical films that has ever been made. Now, there's a handful of shots in that movie that just, quite frankly, aren't up to modern standard. And if you were to take and use some CGI to just tweak those scenes in a movie like the original Labyrinth, it could honestly be interesting to a modern audience with very little work. And that's kind of the thing that we have learned about Star Trek the Motion Picture. Because, well, and as far as the visuals, I should say, because like I have said, I realize that the writing and the timing of this movie is not everybody's personal taste. But overall, Star Trek the Motion Picture is a very good movie. It is a very visually interesting movie. I mean, like here, we're having the scene where we arrive in Ilia's quarters, and she's supposed to be in the sonic shower. That moment is actually, like, the visual effect is actually really cool. And that's an all practical effect with a little bit of hand animation over the top of it. And it's that's the thing, is I feel like we're missing in a lot of modern films. And of course, that moment where somehow Ilia magically gets a dress is confusing as all hell. But because she certainly appeared to be mostly naked a moment ago. It's V'ger is that which programmed me. Who programmed you, V'ger? There's no way of getting out of that particular circle, my dude. I've always wished that, because here in a few moments they're going to be in sick bay and showing Ilia being scanned, and they make it look like she's still biological, because they show the scan up on the wall. Freaking security officer asking questions in a scene like that. Anyways, odd moment, whatever. But I feel like that when they show the scan of Ilia in sickbay, they should have shown something. to make it look more, I don't know, artificial. I can't, I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking for there, but yeah. Because they just kind of show that she's got, it was just a picture of the human nervous system, or the veins. Excuse me. Again, that was actually a great moment. Like, you know that the actress was not strong enough to actually resist DeForest Kelley pulling her in that way, but he makes the way that he like tries to grab her arm and pull her, it looks natural. Like this was, it's like if you tried to grab a friggin' stop sign and go, like the stop sign's not gonna move. And that was all in DeForest Kelley's acting. Because, I'm 99% sure that the actress was not strong enough to stop him from being able to move her a little. But this is actually one of the coolest bio beds that I feel like we ever see in any of the Star Trek movies, and then we never see it again. It's just in this one scene with the little Lunch-O-Matics in the background, which I know that's not what they're probably supposed to be, but it reminds me of those like diners from the 1950s where you walk up and you see the ham and cheese sandwich in there and you're just like, oh, I'll get that, and you drop a quarter in and take the ham and cheese sandwich out. The only visual problem that I have with this movie is that there are several shots. There's a couple in this scene that's happening as we're talking that they do. It's called the double focus, where you have two people and one of them is supposed to be further away and one of them is supposed to be closer to the camera. And what they do is they actually use a lens that has a graduated line in between, so that both the person who is close to the screen and the person who is far away from the screen are in proper focus. And it causes that right in between them, you see that weird focus line that it's actually kind of distracting now watching this in HD. Oh, Trek Reviewer said, I'd like to see other Deltans or some Binars in Trek. Can I be honest? Personally, the Binars kind of bored me. And this is one of those, it's like, maybe I should just try and write it myself. If you could get a writer who could actually do something interesting with the Binars, then cool. But just from that one episode during the first season of Next Generation, I'm not particularly interested in revisiting the Binars. They were kind of boring to me. And on the other hand, the Deltans, no, there's obviously some very interesting layers to their society that I would totally love to revisit. And actually, to be fair, one of the things, so I didn't know this till obviously a few years ago. Well, about 10 years ago, I made friends with somebody who has, it's called universal alopecia. This is actually a thing that like 0.001% of people have, which means that they completely lack the ability to grow hair anywhere on their body, head to toe, which is supposed to be the sort of the thing about Deltans, is that they don't have body hair of any sort. And it's one of those things of that would actually be a really cool way of, if there are any actors of any sort who want to have an inlet into acting, that playing a Delton would be a really good way of doing that. And it's just, we haven't seen any Star Trek producers go about doing that yet. But yeah, that's just my thought. But yeah, like I said, I feel like the Deltons, even though there's only been a little bit, there was some done in some of the comic books, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was really big into the Star Trek comic books. Only in the last couple of years have I really gotten back into the Star Trek comic books, and I've been especially reading the Mirror Universe, I think it's called like Shattered Mirror, and there's some really good comic books that have been coming out in the last couple of years for Star Trek. There was the Star Trek, they did original series Star Trek Year 4 and Year 5. Which, real quick, love this. Sets up, you see the orange suit, you see the white suit, space suit here as Spock comes in to use the airlock. There's the word. Sorry, I had a moment where I forgot the word. To use the airlock, and it's actually a really great thing. I was talking to a friend earlier about the idea of Chekhov's gun. If you're not familiar with the idea of Chekhov's gun, this comes from not the character from Star Trek, but the playwright Chekhov, who had this idea that if you see a gun that doesn't get used early on in a show, it has to be used by the end of the show. And that is one of the really great things in movies and such, is when you see an item introduced at some point that it seems innocuous, it seems like it might not be important, but then to have it, later on, we find out what that was, why it's important. And, in that moment where we see Spock in the airlock chamber, we see the orange and the white suits. It's a small thing, tiny thing. But in a few more minutes, it's going to be important, because we're going to see Spock in the orange suit, and then we're going to see Kirk in the white suit. Which, this is one of those, this is the only moment in the movie where I don't care for the particular aesthetic. I don't know why the hell Spock's outfit is orange. It's a hideous color of orange. And Kirk in all white is also hideous. That's just my personal opinion. Let's see. Trevor says, but having binars on the ship would open a lot of interesting stories, especially if one of them gets killed. Well, that was, I don't know if you ever had a chance. I don't think they're doing any more of them from in the early 2000s. I want to say about 2005 or 6 or so. May have been a little earlier. May have been, man, I'm trying to drawing a blank. They did a series of books called Starfleet Corps of Engineers. The main character was Scotty, and it was set in the post Next Generation era. And Scotty was in charge of a team from the Corps of Engineers, and he had a pair of binars on his engineering team, and basically they just kind of traveled around, and they went to space station here, ship here, blah blah blah, and fixed fix shit all over the place. And it was really interesting. But again, the two binary characters in that particular book series were kind of boring. Like, they had the characters there, but it was just, they were just kind of there. They weren't really all that interesting. New Frontiers, they have binaries? Because I have read almost all of those books, because when those came out, man, oh my God, I fucking loved New Frontiers. Captain Calhoun was amazing. Getting Dr. Cellar, the idea that the helmsman, oh man, I'm forgetting his name, turned out to be like a half Q. That was all really cool. I gotta go back to the movie for a minute. These visual effects, which these are not modified, these are all original 1978, 1979 visuals. Fucking beautiful. There was so much work that went into making these visuals in this particular scene of Spock traveling through V'ger. It's like, honestly, when it comes to that particular time period and these particular types of visuals, 2001: A Space Odyssey is the only one that was better. And this moment where Spock is talking about the recording of the planets, the stars, etc., it almost makes you wonder if V'ger has actually been, in his own way, eating those planets in some kind of way, just to try and understand the knowledge of those planets and such. So, God, this is an amazing scene. Like I said, the fact that this is all, I know that this entire scene is still, like, maybe they've done some digital upgrading on it, but it's still a beautiful scene. And oh, you said you think so? You might be right. I don't remember binary characters in New Frontiers. I still have yet to read the last, like, 2 or 3 novels. I know there was about, I know that there was 2 that came out on as ebooks only that I have not read at all, and I've actually got 1 book sitting on my bookshelf right over there that I still haven't gotten to, and I need to. And yeah, Robin Leafler and her mom were supposed to be, she was supposed to be Una from Enterprise, from the original Enterprise #1, which will be interesting to see if they try to keep that going with the new series. I really do like Rebecca Romaine's version of #1 that we have seen so far on Discovery. I'm very, very excited for Strange New Worlds. It looks like it's going to be an amazing series. Again, the visual effects in that moment right there, where they show the computer screens that are laid over the scene with Kirk and McCoy, and the biobeds that are literally absolute redresses for the Next Generation. It's so funny to me how many of these sets were redressed for Next Generation with very, very little work. But yeah, Robin Leifler was the chief of operations on in New Frontiers. The chief engineer was Bergeon 132. Oh, it's been a minute. But yeah, the helmsman was Mark McHenry. I remember him. He was the one who ended up being half Q. There was one of the security officers who was a genetically modified Mugato or Gumato. Sorry, I love that. I love that joke. I love Lower Decks. If you haven't seen any of my stuff online, I'm Lower Decks. As far as any of the modern Trek, Lower Decks is my number one. You say, I hope they explain why number one did not stay on board for Kirk's 5 year. Well, actually, that actually was in one of the books from way back. That she actually got promoted to captain. Around the same time that Kirk did, and she became the captain of. I know this. Oh man, I remember reading it. She became the captain of another ship. And I am totally spacing out on it right now. And in fact, later on, she eventually became fleet captain, kept that ship that she was the captain of, and it was one of the ships. I remember the big thing in the books, the big thing about it was that it was one of the handful, because like that was like the big thing. It was God, I want to say it was in the Sulu novel that of the original like 30 Constitution class ships, that the ship that number one Ona, the one that she became captain of, ended up being like one of like 3 or 4 to never be destroyed. That that there was only this handful left. Oh man, that's gonna bug me now that I can't remember what the name of that ship was. That her ship was one of the very few remaining in the 24th century. The ship that was her first command. As far as that whole did she get hurt thing, that was like because there was this whole thing about her getting incorporated into becoming a part of the central computer, and she was part of the Excalibur A central computer. It was really weird. It's one of those, okay, yeah, you do your thing, Mr. Peter David. I joke, he really is one of my favorite. He is my favorite Star Trek writer. Peter David was the New Frontier novels were amazing. I'm actually Q Squared. I see it sitting on my shelf right over there. It was an amazing book. That's the one where he introduces the idea that Trelon, the guy from the Squire of Gothos episode of the original series, that he was a Sorry, my headphones did somewhere. That he was a Q. And he also did the Imzadi books. Several. Peter David is one of the best Star Trek writers. He also wrote, a lot of people don't realize this, he also wrote a whole bunch of Hulk novels back in the day, or not novels, comic books back in the day. And really, really good. Man, you are distracting the hell out of me from this movie. So yeah. Sorry, just trying to. Oh, you meant before Kirk took command? I don't recall. As far as number one story, I don't remember reading anything about her character in the novels of before that time period. There was the early Voyages comic book series, which that was a really cool comic book series. If you have the chance to look that up and read some of those, man, those were really cool. I really hope that I would love it if they used some of those to influence the new series. I can tell you, they obviously have not done a few of them because in the comic series, the chief engineer was actually a Indian, and not Native American Indian, an actual like India Indian, um, who was a very fascinating character in the comic book. Um, but yeah, you might be aware of something that I don't remember as far as number one, Una. It may have been one of the books that I've missed out on, which is entirely possible if anybody's paid attention to Star Trek novels over the past 50 years, is the fact that there's like 1,000,001 freaking books, and it's really difficult to keep track of all the novels, which is why I am so glad that the novels have never been necessarily considered canon. You've never read the comic books because when you try to read the comic books, you get a headache. Oh, that's unfortunate. Because there's some really good comic books and graphic novels for Star Trek. Like I said, the early Voyages comic books are worth it. New Frontiers actually did a handful of graphic novels that were very good as well. Again, oh man, this goes back. So getting back to the movie, like I was talking about, people, like I was saying earlier, or way earlier, people, don't pay attention to how good of an actor William Shatner is. This scene alone, where he's arguing with the Ilea probe, is brilliant. You can see the thought, you can see the conflict in in the moments of Kirk, of him trying to mentally calculate, how do I need to respond, what is the best thing to say, what is the using the information I've been given. These are brilliant moments for Shatner. without being over the top, which is actually the biggest thing. Congratulations to Robert Wise on that he managed to get a decent performance out of Shatner without letting him push it over the top. Again, visual effects, man. This moment where the iris opens and the tiny little Enterprise goes through this giant ship. Beautiful. Fucking beautiful. It really is. Man. Oh, you've got over 100 books in your collection? At one point I did. And I gave away probably 90% of them. I kept only a handful of books. Because it was a combination of things of just keeping that many books with me was too much. And I had a friend who was, wanting to get into reading more of the Star Trek novels and that kind of thing. And so I gave a lot of my Star Trek novels away. And Trek Review says, whenever I see older Kirk run, all I can think of is T.J. Hooker. I gotta be honest, I have only probably in my entire life only seen like maybe a half dozen episodes of T.J. Hooker. It's not that I have anything against it. It's just I'm not a big cop show guy, for one. Like honestly, outside of like Star Trek, most of what I ever watched William Shatner in was like Rescue 911. Like I don't know why, when I was a kid, my mom absolutely fucking loved Rescue 911. And I think it was on Tuesdays, and it was like Tuesday at 7:00. We were watching Rescue 911. That was bam. It's like that's a hardcore memory for me at like 10, 11 years old. Like I wasn't even that big into Star Trek yet at 10. And I was already, we're fucking watching Rescue 911. Anyways. So yeah, we're at an hour and 50 minutes into the movie. This scene, oh my God, this is so cool. So we actually see this little lift that comes out of the front of the saucer section, which who the fuck would have just thought of that? That was so cool. Just, door opens, lift comes up with the people standing on it. They walk out, and they have these freaking hexagonal things that they have to walk for a mile, it looks like, to get to V'ger. Again, visual effects shots. These are some fantastic shots. All of them are practical effects using a combination of sets, lighting, miniatures. Like the ship there, they only built like a 20 by 20 section of the ship, and the rest was they just incorporated the miniature into looking like it's fucking huge. It's so great. And then this moment, they come over this ridge. They finally see V'ger, and it looks like that thing that we saw on TV just the other day. And that is brilliant. Like, I don't remember who wrote this movie right offhand. I'll have to double check that before we end the live stream. But everyone in the United States in 1979 had been watching all of the various NASA feeds and the launches of the various probes, etc., etc. And when this happened, this movie came out, Voyager 1 and 2, which they were the only ones that ever happened. They didn't realize that at the time, but parallel universe, whatever. Voyager 1 and 2 had already been launched. And Voyager 2 looks almost identical to this probe that we are seeing on screen. Handful of differences. And real quick, I haven't said anything about the music in this movie, but I do have to stop and because that moment reminded me the music in this movie. I'm a big fan of really, really good music for a movie, and this movie has some amazing music. But yeah, the moment where Kirk has realized this is Voyager 6, which again in real world never technically happened. There was only the two Voyager probes. But at least as of 2020, what year is this? 2? God. We still haven't launched any other Voyager probes. But they designed the probe for the movie to be visually similar to the Voyager 2 probe, which made that moment just really quite brilliant. And the idea that for most people, they would have seen this and said, that looks a lot like the thing that I just saw on TV a few months ago. Trek says, I got my first Star Trek novels from my 5th grade teacher who got them from her sister who was trying to get rid of them. They were books by James Blish. Huh. I don't recognize that name offhand. I'll have to look those up, see if I've read any of them. Because there's a lot of Star Trek novels I've read that I can't immediately recall the names of the writers. Like I know when I've read a Peter David novel because he really, for me, I will say, is my favorite Star Trek writer. And I can immediately recall any time that I have read one of his novels. I would say in that same list, J.M. Dillard is actually a fantastic Star Trek novelist, or was. I actually should say that I don't recall anything of hers coming out in the last few years. So she might not be writing any. Of course, Peter David hasn't written anything for Star Trek in several years as well. They were the first Star Trek books written. Okay. You're probably talking about, trying to think of the name of some of those early novels. I've only read, as far as like the original series early stuff, I've only read a little bit. I was definitely a Next Generation Deep Space Nine kid. That was my era. So like easily 90% of the books that I have read have been that, like, from Next Generation to Voyager period. I've read some of the original series novels, but I will admit that I have not read very many, which is probably why that particular writer's name doesn't stand out to me. Not to take anything away from him, by the way. Um, if it's someone whose name has, one of the things I will always say about it, if a writer's name actually sticks with you over several years, like for me, the way that Peter David and his writing, the way that it has stuck with me over the years, that to me is a sign that they did something well in their writing. And if James Blish, and what's actually weird is that name does sound vaguely familiar. It's if the name has stuck with you, that means that at least for the way that you view the writing, then obviously they did something right in their writing. um, there were novelizations of the original series episodes. Okay, was that the is that those books that were like labeled Star Trek logs number 1, number 2, number 3? I've always been curious to read those because from what I understand, those were like the novelizations of episodes. And this scene. V'ger decided to melt its own wires. Um, that makes no sense at all. But this allows the conclusion of the Decker Ilea arc of this particular movie that allows us to resolve the story without losing any of our favorite group of characters. Which overall, I mean, obviously, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy get easily the majority of the spotlight in this movie, which they always had. Which that was essentially the essence of the original series. Scotty was, the next in line. He gets several really good scenes in this movie. Behind him, Uhura is probably the next best spotlighted character in this movie. She's not got any strong particular moments, but it's kind of a thing of overall we just get to enjoy Uhura and Nichelle Nichols in these scenes versus as much as she could have been used. And then it's like Sulu, Chekhov, Rand, and Chapel all kind of just are on the sidelines of the story. They're around. And it's unfortunate, but it's still a good story overall. Maybe it would have been interesting if Sulu had been the one to sacrifice himself in this movie. Who knows? And this moment with Decker where he sacrifices himself, it seems kind of bland because we don't know enough about the character, which is why I'm saying that it might have been more interesting if it was one of our other regulars, like possibly Sulu. It's good, but I don't know. It just feels a little bit of a miss for me on the way that they used Decker in this particular scene. That maybe there was a chance it could have been done differently. Who knows? And in the grand scheme of if they had managed to actually do a Star Trek Phase 2 series, it might have worked completely different. I mean, honestly, if this movie had been the season 1 finale, after we had 20 some odd episodes to get to know Commander Decker and Lieutenant Ilea, this movie could have been the equivalent of how most fans view, say, Best of Both Worlds in The Next Generation or Way of the Warrior on Deep Space Nine, as just this really great season bridging episode type of thing. And that might actually be the problem of why it only bears as a movie. I think it's a very good movie. Let's see, Trigger Viewer said, I think that was another series. These are numbered Star Trek 1 to 12, but there's no log in the title. I might be getting confused. Like I said, I don't know original series novels all that well. I know I've seen some of those early novels, but I'm probably a little confused. Spock, have we just seen the beginning of a new life form? Been a long time since I delivered a baby. Yes, McCoy, it's obvious. To be fair, you still haven't delivered a baby. You've only made an awkward movie awkward. Like I said, overall, I really do enjoy this movie. I really feel like the biggest thing that probably hurt this movie is the aesthetics. A lot of people didn't like the way that this movie particularly looked. And over the long haul of time, people didn't appreciate this movie as much as I think that they could have because of those aesthetic issues. And they underappreciate that it's actually a pretty decent movie with a very beautiful ship. Look at that ship. So pretty. And the score is amazing. And there she goes, flying off into the distance. So that is Star Trek, the motion picture. The human adventure is just beginning. I don't know why the fuck they decided to put that in. That is a weird choice. But okay. thank you guys for joining me on this somewhat infused watch of Star Trek the Motion Picture. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a kick out of the conversation. We've been all over the place. Thank you, Trek Reviewer. You have definitely added some interesting conversational points. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, all the stuff. I will talk with you soon. Thank you, and y'all have a great night.